gentlemen. I just want to have a testing with Professor Zhao.
Go for it.
Hi. I have made you co-host, and can you see if you can share your screen?
Yes. Can you see it?
About to see it. It's still waiting. Yes, I can see it. Can you make it full screen?
Oh, that's good.
Can you try to make it full screen with F5?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks very good from here as well. So I guess it will be very good from, on Zoom as well.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, so that's fine then. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly?
Oh, very clearly. And good to see you again. I think we met before in Munich once.
Yes.
Yeah.
We met in a conference.
Yes, in a conference. I don't remember the title of it, but yeah, a Buddhist conference. Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, good to have you here as well.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Okay, so stay chill. We'll be resuming in about 9 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Tell me you're doing this.
Oh no, I don't need to look. No.
Okay, thanks again for your patience. One here and at home. Hopefully I can be heard. So next we have Dr. Zhao Wen, who is presenting remotely. He is a lecturer at Nankai University in China. He received his PhD from LMU Munich, where he studied the historical development of seeing the Buddha and its relationship with Buddha embodiments in early Prajnaparamita literature. He focuses on the Bodhisattva practice in the Prajnaparamita tradition, as well as broader issues like the history of ideas and Buddha visualization practices. His research also includes traditional Chinese religious and cultural exchange on the Silk Road, with a particular interest in Chinese divination practices and the historical development of technical terms in those texts. Currently, he is studying an astrological text in the Taoist canon that shows influences from the Hellenistic astrologer Dorotheus, which sheds light on the development of divination techniques in China. And he's also working on the Yogalehrbuch. So when you're ready, Zhao, please.
Hello. Thank you. Many thanks to the organizers to invite me for joining this conference. As you see, my topic is the Buddhānusmṛti, the recollection of Buddha as the Buddha visualization meditation. In this talk, I would like to investigate the sources concerning Buddhānusmṛti, described as the Buddha visualizing process in the early Mahāyāna Sutras and in the Yogalehrbuch. Thus, my talk will be given into two individual parts, and finally with a concluding remarks. The two parts represent two types of Buddha visualization meditation before the arising of the esoteric Buddhism. First, the Mahāyāna practice of Buddhānusmṛti for the purpose of rebirth in the Buddha field Sukhavati. And second, the Buddha visualizing practice associated with the mainstream Buddhism, particularly with the Sarvāstivāda tradition. The first part is the early Mahāyāna practice of Buddhānusmṛti. The Mahāyāna text, Pratyutpana Buddha Samukhavastita Samadhi Sutra, has the close geographical and textual relationship with the Prajnaparamita literature. It is reflected foremost in the fact that the Taishu 418, the Banzhou Sanmeijing, and the first Chinese translation of Ashta Sahasrika Prajnaparamita, the Daoxing般若经, were both translated by the same person, Lokakshima. Paul Harris also notes that the internal textual evidences also suggest that the Pratyutpana Sutra, Banzhou Sanmeijing, was significantly influenced by early Prajnaparamita thought. And he states the two branches of the Mahāyāna went on their own way. The Sukhavati Vyuha and the related sutras hardly mentioning Shunyata, while the Prajnaparamita sutras, in their turn, pass over in silence the question of rebirth in Sukhavati and similar words. Accordingly, Buddhānusmṛti, or more generally encounters in meditation or otherwise with Buddhas, has quite different functions in the Prajnaparamita and the Pure Land texts. The Pratyutpana Sutra, however, goes some way towards bridging this gap, for it propounds the Buddhānusmṛti in terms of doctrine of Shunyata, and at the same time refers to Amitabha. The Buddhānusmṛti in Pratyutpana Sutra refers to the visualization of Buddha. And the process of visualization can be found in one significant passage from the chapter 2 of the Sutta. It states, Patalapala bodhisattvas hear of Buddha of the present in whatever quarter they are facing and constantly reflect on that quarter, wishing to see the Buddha. When they reflect on the Buddha, they ought not to reflect on him as an existing thing, nor should they have the notion it is something set up by me. As they would conceive of emptiness, so should they reflect on the Buddha standing there like a precious gem set on brow. In this way, bodhisattvas will have a clear vision of the innumerable Buddhas of the 10 quarters. The description, as they would conceive of emptiness, so should they reflect on the Buddha standing there in this passage, is not particularly intelligible. And the difficulties in understanding the Chinese and Tibetan translations of the passage has also been noted by Paul Harrison. However, its quotation in Da-Zhi-Du Lun, a commentary on the larger Buddha sheds greater light. Here, the visualization of the figure of Buddha standing in the empty space without any other form is more clearly formulated. So the text says, question, what is the smarty of Buddhānusmṛti that leads to the rebirth in that Buddha field? The answer is, recollecting the Buddha is to recollect the 32 major characteristics, 80 minor marks, and the golden body, which sheds the light full of the 10 quarters. At that time, the practitioner has no other conception of form, such as mountains, earth, trees, and they only sees the bodies of the Buddhas in the empty space, as the pure God shows itself in the bowl, or the monk enters into the reflections on impurity. He only sees the body swelling and the rotten body, and even only the skeleton. In addition, hearing the name of a present Buddha, such as Amitabha, is regarded as the starting point of the visualization practice. This recalls some records of Buddhānusmṛti found in Sukhavati Vyuha literature. In the larger Sukhavati Vyuha, for instance, hearing the Buddha's name is one of the methods of cultic practice directed towards Amitabha, and is held to result in rebirth as a bodhisattva in the Buddha field, Sukhavati. It says, furthermore, through hearing the name of the Buddha, Amitabha, and having only a faithful mind in respect to Sukhavati, one is born in that world. In a manner akin to the Pryutapana Sutra, hearing the name of the Buddha, Buddha-nama Slavana, triggers the wish to
There's the wish to hear the rest of the
Sorry. So Zhao, I think we have a connection with the internet problem. Can you hear me?
Seems like Nankai has a Wi-Fi problem.
He's there.
Ask him to type in the chat.
You're on mute.
No, I have sound here. That's why.
That's it. That's it.
Oh,
That's his screen actually.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, you're back.
Ah, good. Yeah. So where are we?
We are somewhere around the Sukhamati.
I see.
Before that.
Yeah,
Is-
that's still.
Is this correct?
Yes, this one, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. So, yeah, again, in the largest Sukhavati Vyuha, for instance, hearing the Buddha's name is one of the methods. One of the methods of occultic practice directed towards Amitabha, and is held to result in rebirth as a bodhisattva in the Buddha field Sukhavati. It says, through hearing the name of the Buddha, Amitabha, and having only a faithful mind in respect to Sukhavati, one is born in that world. In a manner akin to the Pratyutpana Sutra, hearing the name of the Buddha in this text triggers the wish to see the Buddha and be reborn in the Buddha field Sukhavati. The larger Sukhavati Vyuha does not explicitly record the practice of calling out the Buddha's name, a tenet emphasized in the Eastern Asian Pure Land Buddhist tradition, but records instead the practice of producing a thought directed towards a vision of Amitabha, the Tathagata, noble one, perfected, awakened one. Significantly, the relationship between making a Buddha image and attaining the samadhi can be also found in many places in the Pratyutpana Sutra. Thus, we have the process of Buddha visualization recorded in the Pratyutpana Sutra, like hearing the name, first hearing the name of one Buddha, and then facing the direction of that Buddha, and then concentrating on the figure of that Buddha. Then one has a vision of the Buddhas of 10 directions. It may reflect a type of popular practice of Buddhānusmṛti among Mahāyāna Buddhist communities, at latest in the 2nd century CE, and particularly among followers of the cult of Amitabha Buddha. The process of visualization, according to the passage quoted above, is supposed to generate a clear vision of innumerable Buddhas of the 10 quarters. Notably, another attestation of this practice is to be found in the description of the Eka Vyuha Samadhi in the Sabda Shatika Prajnaparamita, which follows a similar structure as the process mentioned above. Here, I would like to investigate 2 Mahayana texts which highlight concentrating on the name or reciting the name in the context of Buddhānusmṛti. They are Sabda Shatika Prajnaparamita and smaller Sukhavati Vyuha, respectively. First, we have the Eka Vyuha Samadhi, the definition of Eka Vyuha Samadhi in the Sabda Shatika Prajnaparamita. It also refers to Buddhānusmṛti. We translate the relative passage as follows. Good men and women who want to enter into the Eka Vyuha Samadhi should construct a secluded dwelling. They should practice without the pleasure of sensual attachment. They should sit in the Parayanga posture with focusing the mind on all signs, nimitta. Thereupon, they should focus on one Tathagata and on all talamas, not by the method of mental perception, they should focus on that detector and recite his name. After hearing the name, one should sit facing the direction of the detector, and thus, focusing his mind on that detector, he will focus on the Buddhas, the blessed ones of the past, future, and present. First of all, how could we understand focusing the mind on all signs? As stated in Shlavakapumi, at the beginning of the practice of impurity, Ashupa, one perceives nimitta by means of sitting beside the cemetery or having the relevant image in hand. So here, Salva nimitta manasikala may refer to the visual object outside the mind. For instance, the signs of Buddha figure. In addition, as is shown in Egerton, Upalampa Yogena literally means by the erroneous method of perception. And Anupalampa Yoga could be without fancy, not necessarily to refuse the visualization. Thus, focusing the mind on the detector without fancy might be connected with the practice reflected in the Pryutapana Sutra and the Dajidulun, as we discussed above. Furthermore, it's quite clear that the recitation of the name of the Buddha is added to this context. The sentence, the name is to be held, dasya nama teyam glihitavyam, as given by previous studies, refers to his name is to be recited. And the reading of nama teya with glaha as to recite the name reveals a practice slightly different from that in our previous discussion concerning Buddhānusmṛti. The concentration on the name rather than figure can be found in Sattama Pundalika. For following sentence showing us another case of nama teya with glaha indicates calling out the name. It says, good man, if the 3,000 great thousand worlds were occupied by the ghosts and demons by means of taking hold of the name of the Bodhisattva, those who have guilty mind would lose their faculty of sight. In this sentence, we see the usage namateya with glaha, which also occurs in the Sabda Sadika Prajñabhamita. But in contrast to the case of Sabda Sadika, in this chapter, it means to recite the name. In Pratutpana Sutra, reciting the name of Buddha does not occur in our first example. Although we can find the notion of hearing the name of Buddha, it only functions to trigger the successive process of visualization. However, in the Sabda Sadika Prajñabhamita, which has an ambiguous attitude toward the perception of figure and highlights concentrating on the name or reciting the name, stand in closer agreement with the smaller Sukhavativyuha Sutra. First of all, in smaller Sukhavativyuha, the general structure of concentration on Buddha also resembles that in Pratutpana Sutra, like hearing the name and then 7 days concentration and then clear vision of the Buddha. However, the smaller Sukhavati Vyuha states that one hears the name of Amitabha and after hearing the name, he concentrates upon it continuously for up to 7 days without distracted mind. So it also stresses the concentration on the name. Therefore, we can roughly categorize the examples of Buddhānusmṛti in the context of meditation in early Mahayana sources into 2 types. The first type is represented by Pratyutpana Sudra and the larger Sukhavati Vyuha. It has a following model. Here is the name, then visualizing one Buddha, and then we have the vision of all Buddhas. And it is intended for the purpose of rebirth in an ideal Buddha field. The second type, represented by the Shabda Shatika Prajñabhamida and the smaller Sukhavati Vyuha, has a similar process but stress on focusing on the name of one Buddha rather than the image. Then let's move to the second part, the Buddhānusmṛti in the Yogalehrbuch. As we have seen in the previous 2 presentations, the Yogalehrbuch has a close relationship with the Sarvāstivāda Abhidharma. And there's one Abhidharma text, the Abhidharma Dipa by Dipakala, belonging to the orthodoxy Sarvāstivāda texts, but following Vasubandhu's Abhidharma Kosha in its structure. In this text, the term, the Jamma Shalila, the body of birth, appears in the context of seeing Buddha. And the body of birth is associated with the 32 characteristics of the great being and 80 minor remarks, and etc. In another passage from the same text, not only Jamma Shalila appears, and it also occurs together with Dharma Shalila as a pair. And we see what exactly the 2 bodies refer to. The Jamma Shalila, the body of birth, is associated with the 32 characteristics of great being, and the Dharma Shalila refers to 18 special dharma, Avenika dharma. So in these are the qualities of the Buddha. These features associated with 2 bodies can be already seen in the 2 separated passages in the Mahavipasha. The Dharmakaya are equal, it says. That's to say, as one Buddha accomplishes limited merits of 18 special qualities, the 10 powers, the 4 confidences, the great compassion, and the 3 foundations of mindfulness. So too do the other Buddhas, and thus we say they are all equal. So the Dharmakaya here is not what we read in the Mahayana text. It's only associated with the qualities of Buddha. And the second passage, it also mentions the body of birth. So in the Yogalehrbuch, in this Central Asia meditation menu, the pair model Jamma Dharma Shalila occurs in the section of Buddhānusmṛti. Actually, this pair model is just the basic structure of the whole section of Buddhānusmṛti. Considering our previous discussion, together with the passages from the Chinese meditation manuals, we can gain a better understanding of the Buddhānusmṛti section in the Yogalehrbuch. The passages on Buddhānusmṛti, following the structure of the two bodies, can be mainly found in the four Chinese meditation manuals. Now we shall start with the section of Buddhānusmṛti in Yogalehrbuch. First, at the beginning of the section, we see the 10 epithets of Buddha. And also in Kumalajiva's meditation manual, concentration of sitting meditation, we also see the 10 epithets at the beginning of Buddhānusmṛti. The 10 epithets are quoted from the Mahāyāna Sutta in the canonical text. It represents the earliest contents of Buddhānusmṛti. Then the meditator recollects the Buddha figure and changes the colors at his will. This could be starting point of visualizing the physical body or the body of birth of Buddha. In the concentration of sitting meditation by Kumalajiva, similarly, we can also see the different colors, like in the Sanskrit text. And the following part is also comparable with Chinese sources. According to the Sanskrit fragments, the crucial scenes of Buddha's life are all briefly mentioned in the Buddhānusmṛti section. And in the passage about Buddhānusmṛti in the Chinese sources, correspondingly, only 3 important scenes are mentioned, namely sitting under the Bodhi tree, preaching Dharma for 5 bhikshu, and preaching Prajna with radiation for masses on the mountain. And similarly, we also see the sense stated in the concentration of sitting meditation. And also in Vimuttimagga, the tales, these stories are also mentioned. So Yogalehrbuch, in Yogalehrbuch, we see these stories of Buddha's life, and they are also depicted in the Khizr caves. So maybe they are also used for visualization. With respect to Dharma body, 4 groups of concepts, 10 powers, 4 confidences, 3 distinctive bases of mindfulness, and the great compassion are concerned. The distinctive basis of mindfulness cannot be found in relevant part of the Chinese meditation manuals, but it is replaced by 18 special qualities. This is mainly caused by the variant list of 18 special qualities, and classification by Yogalehrbuch is obviously in line with the Mahavipasha and the Abhidharma passages we quoted above. In addition, we see the embodied symbols for the qualities of the Dharma body in the Yogalehrbuch. For instance, the 10 powers are represented by the vision of 5 white elephants and 5 Buddhas. The signs for the 4 confidences is 4 treasure cycles, and that of the 3 distinctive bases of mindfulness is 3 people holding weapon and the oil jar. And that of great compassion is the woman with the color of empty space. However, in Chinese sources, we only see the jar or golden jar containing the many jewels is used to describe the Dharmakaya inside the physical body. That concludes my presentation. Here, I just summarize some main points in this presentation. First, the arising of the status of the Buddha during the beginning of the Common Era contributed largely to the transformation of the practice of Buddhānusmṛti from recollecting the Buddha into the visualization of Buddha figure. Second, the process of the early Mahāyāna Buddhānusmṛti begins with the focus on one Buddha, but it is targeted to the vision of all Buddhas. If the one focuses on the Buddha Amitabha, the result of the practice could be the rebirth in the Buddha field Sukhavati after his death. The third, the section on Buddhānusmṛti in Yogalehrbuch and in the Chinese meditation manuals adopt the conception of 2 bodies of Buddha in the Sarvāstivāda Abhidharma, namely the body of birth and the body of Dharma. The body of Dharma is interpreted as the qualities of the Buddha rather than the truth or the omnipresent body in the Mahāyāna texts. This is my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I would like to, I'm pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions in the room first of all? Questions or comments? Two hands going up very slowly. I think you would just Henry, go ahead.
Thank you, Wen, for your presentation, and thank you also for further pointing out some of these affinities with the Mahavibhasha. What I understood from your presentation is that the Yogalehrbuch therefore does not really touch upon the type of Buddhānusmṛti that we encounter in Prajnaparamita or in Pure Land texts. So I wondered how you see the relationship on the one hand between the Vibhasha and these Mahāyāna traditions, namely, do we observe a Sarvāstivāda response to Mahāyāna as regards Buddhānusmṛti, and could we potentially then consider the Yogalehrbuch in terms of a Vaibhashika response as well?
Sorry for this second question.
So if you would agree, or if the Vibhasha is indicates that it responds to the Mahāyāna practice of Buddhānusmṛti, can we also understand the Yogalehrbuch in a similar way?
I think it's not necessary to respond to Mahāyāna text for the Mahavibhasha. Mahavibhasha text has its own tradition. If we check the early treatises like not in the Sarvāstivāda tradition, but also other early treatises like the Petacoptesha or the Vimuttimagga. They are all dated dated to 1st or 2nd century. They also have the a different view of Buddha body, like the Dharmakaya or Dharmashalila is interpreted. The Buddha is the Buddha qualities are stated in this source in these treatises, and the Buddha qualities in Mahavipasha is regarded as the Dharmakaya. So I think for the Mahavipasha, the understanding of Dharmakaya is not response to the Mahāyāna text. It has its own tradition, a development from the canonical text to the early treatises and to the Sarvāstivāda understanding.
Thank you.
Okay. Zhao, you-
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I had two comments. One was about the Dharmakaya. I believe that Paul Harrison has pointed out that in the Mahāyāna itself, there are traditions of interpreting the Dharmakaya as being a collection of qualities and wisdom. But then, of course, we have the alternative tradition. So that tradition would go back to Abhidharma, and then there's an alternative tradition of it being, as you pointed out, the absolute body of truth or reality. And another comment I found very interesting what you said about hearing the name of the Buddha versus visualizing the Buddha as two different modes of Buddhānusmṛti. And also having a vision of, or a visualization of one Buddha as encompassing a vision of all the Buddhas in the 10 directions. I think it's maybe useful also in terms of the wider discussion that might follow, that in Buddhism we often have alternative movements, either towards complexity or towards simplicity. And it's often, one movement might follow another historically, and it's almost a kind of counter-reaction. So we have, you would say that this focus on just hearing and remembering the name of the Buddha would be movement towards simplicity, whereas visualizing the Buddha would be one towards greater complexity. And I believe, but I'm not specialized in that, but I believe that in the later Pure Land traditions too, there were different views on this, whether just repeating Amitabha's name again and again, whether that's a sufficient practice or whether one has to incorporate visualization and so on. So it's just a comment on the very, very interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we go to Andrew's question next? Andrew, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
All right. Okay. Dr. Zhao, thank you very much for that presentation. It was really very interesting, and I really appreciate the attempt to begin to create a taxonomy of different methods. But I want to ask a question about the category of just focusing on the name or the recitation of the name. You showed us a passage from the Manjushri Parivarta Sutra, and immediately before the reference to reciting the name, I believe there was a clause which was something like Sarva Nimittani Manasikara. In other words, and I think you translated that as focusing the mind on all the nimitta. And you didn't seem to comment on that, but it strikes me that that's quite a significant instruction. And I wanted to ask, what do you understand by the referent of sarva nimitta to be? And how do you reconcile that with what you seem to be saying, which was that this was a method that employed just using the name?
Yeah, thank you. This passage in the Saptashatika Prajnaparamita is quite important because the Yogalehrbuch in the Eastern Asia Buddhist tradition is very important. It's for instance, in Chan Buddhism or in Tiantai Buddhism, it is quoted, but the Chinese translations of this text has a different understanding. The early translation does not agree with the perception of visualization. It abandons the visualization, only focusing on Buddha's name. And the second translation by Xuanzang is both visualization and the recitation of name are both emphasized. So my opinion is that the text also has a visualization, but it emphasizes or it highlights the sound, the recitation of name. Because this nimitta, as I stated in the presentation, the nimitta occurs also in the Savakapumi when the practitioner practices the Ashupa, the meditation of Ashupa. The practitioner needs to sit before his meditation. He needs to see the image of the impurity. So this is nimitta, and this text in Saptashatika Prajnaparamita, it also says one sits there in Palayanga posture and focusing on nimitta. So I think the nimitta should be the characteristics of Buddha. And the Yogalehrbuch Samadhi has actually two perspectives. One is the visualization, and another is the reciting name.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, no, that's an excellent answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, Zhao, thank you very much. We will move on and we will revisit more of this, I'm sure, shortly when we have an open discussion. But in the meantime, thank you.
Thank you.